Welcome to the Samson Strength Coach Collective. On today's episode, we have Lew Porchiazzo, Assistant Director of Strength and Conditioning at University of Michigan. First person I believe I've interviewed from Michigan. I'm excited for you guys to listen to this episode. I think Lew is one of those very high-level thinkers. It's interesting, just speaking to some people on the podcast, right? You can understand how different people's brains start to work, right? And Lou is just a very measured and very calculated person, but not in a negative connotation, right? In a way where you can tell he's just very experienced and he's done this job for a long time and he has a lot of really good experience and a lot of good things to share. One of the really unique things about his journey is that he's been at Michigan for almost 15 years at this point. And I think that's incredibly rare within the field of strength and conditioning. So we really touched on that topic. And it was great for me to speak with him. And then, we ended up talking forever after the show ended, talking forever before the show even started. So he was a great, great person to speak with and somebody I really appreciated connecting with. So I think you guys will enjoy listening to it. And as always, thank you for listening. What's going on, Samson Strength Coach Collective listeners? On today's episode, we have Lew Porchiazzo from the University of Michigan. Thank you so much for coming on.
Of course. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
I'm super excited to get into this. We just had a fantastic conversation even pre-show. I like to talk with the coaches who come on just briefly before they enter the Thunderdome, if you will, of the podcast. But I mean, I'm just excited to hear your thoughts, and we've already got a direction we were looking to go with the podcast, but I think you are somebody who can enlighten us with a lot of knowledge, so I'm excited to speak with you.
Yeah, I'm excited to offer what I can and just have a really good conversation and in the hopes that people enjoy what we each have to say.
Absolutely. I always hope that. I certainly hope that the most. But
Yeah, right.
Starting off, can you just give us a brief background of your career and then what's led to your time at University of Michigan?
Sure. Yeah. So for me, I started my undergraduate journey in 2004 at William Patterson University, small Division III school in northern New Jersey. I was an offensive lineman about 60 pounds ago. For those of you that know me on this call, that's surprising given my height or lack of, about 5'6" but I used to be as wide as I am tall. So I was an offensive lineman, center and guard, and really just love the game and love the team aspect of football and being part of an athletic program that has really kind of set the path for my journey as a professional. And so during undergrad, I decided to pursue exercise science as my degree program. I realized that strength and conditioning is a pathway that, one, exists around 2006, and two, that I was more attracted to than coaching sport itself. I gravitated to the weight room and probably excelled there more than I did on the field of play, and realized that was what gave me the opportunity to stand a chance at competing. And so I started to pursue exercise science and pursued a singular internship, kind of put my eggs in one basket, which I don't know that I would necessarily recommend, but it worked out for me. And I committed probably more time to that than I can recognize and recall specifically right now. But my hope starting in 2006 was that in January of 2009, I would land an internship at the U.S. Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs. And so I dotted my I's and crossed my T's and applied in the fall of 2008, interviewed and was accepted by Bo Sandoval, who's now the assistant AD for athletic performance. Pardon me on titles, but is in charge of Olympic sports at Texas A&M after stint with the UFC and several years as a colleague at Michigan as well. And so I went to Colorado Springs, not knowing what I didn't know. Left the Eastern time zone for the first time, ended up there for 5 months as an intern, where I worked with Bo really closely, with John Carlack and with Mike Favor, who's my current boss at Michigan. After I left there, I did another internship with Kaz Kazadi and Andrew Altoff and crew down at Baylor in the summer of 2009. During that time, I was trying to figure out what I would do after that internship and applying for GA positions and paid internships and trying to figure out what was next. Good timing, good fortune. At that point, Mike had left the USOC to take the job as the Director of Strength and Conditioning for Olympic Sports at the University of Michigan. He called me his first or second week on the job, extended the invitation for me to come out as graduate assistant. And so after about zero point 0.3 seconds, I said, I'll see you next week. And so I got in my car, I headed up to Ann Arbor from Waco, Texas. That was the summer of 2009, and I haven't looked back. I completed my master's degree at Eastern Michigan while I worked at U of M. In December of 2011, I was promoted to a full-time position as an assistant, promoted again in 2017, and then again in 2021 in my current role of assistant director, where I support our entire strength and conditioning staff and help support Mike in his role from administrative level, ensure that I conduct our services, strength and conditioning services with my 3 teams: softball, women's gymnastics, men's soccer, and really mentor our entire staff and be a bridge between administration, coaches, staff, student athletes, and be a connector as much as I can until I can just better myself even more.
First of all, the one thing that just I love about was the point 0.3 seconds, right? I'll never forget my first call of getting offered. Obviously there was different opportunities, but I remember I got called about my time at Texas Tech, and I got offered the job, and there was no thoughts of negotiation, there's no thoughts of questions. It was just yes, absolutely. And one of my former interns, just got offered a job recently, and he got off an interview, and he, called me, and he said, I got offered the job. And I said, what'd you say? And I said, yes, immediately, and so it's an exciting time, and it brings up fun emotions, right? Just to think about exactly what leads you to where you currently are. What I think is so amazing about your case, and what's so interesting, and why I'm really excited to dive into it, is that was a role that you accepted, but then led you to Michigan, and then you've been at Michigan since. So how many years is that exactly?
Yeah, so in August, I believe August 3rd of this summer will be the end of 15 years and the start of 16. So almost 15 complete years under my belt so far.
I mean, that's just incredible, and it's just so rare, in my opinion, to see that within strength and conditioning. The time frame is usually 2 years. That's the kind of the typical one I've seen. This is the first time I've had a third year at a school, and so I'm excited to dive into that. But 15 years is a different story. We talked about on the phone. You mentioned a phrase, which is "bloom where you're planted." What does that phrase mean to you, especially considering your time at Michigan?
Yeah, I give a lot of credit to Mike. As I mentioned earlier, he's been my boss for the last 15 plus years and been a tremendous mentor and colleague and friend over the years. That's pushed me, and I like to think I've pushed him as well in a really positive sense. And so it's something I've borrowed from him as I've looked to look for career growth and look for opportunities to better myself, both on a personal financial level, because at the end of the day, we all work to get paid to sustain a comfortable living for ourselves and our family. Right? I'm not blind to that fact, but also to feel fulfilled in my role and in my ability to have an impact on the lives of others. And that impact goes beyond just making people stronger and faster and more fit specific to the demands of their sport or whatever other physiological traits that we're looking to enhance. It's the ability to make lifelong impacts and lasting impacts on somebody's work ethic and on somebody's relationship to exercise in their body to sustain long-term health, not only in the performance during their time as a student athlete for us, but for the 40 or 50 years beyond their time being a competitive student athlete. And so bloom where you're planted is investing in yourself, seeking opportunities for others to invest in you where you are, and finding ways to better yourself with the intent of bettering others through the journey and through the process. I think about it like this: I bought a house with my wife a few years ago. We have a lawn, and it's not in great shape, and I say that humbly. And I often look at my neighbor's lawn across the way, and his lawn is beautiful. And I think it's so darn nice because he waters it all the dang time. And I see him out there with his weed and feed and his edger, and I haven't watered mine quite enough, and I haven't treated mine the way it needs to be treated. But I'm slowly learning from him, and rather than knocking on his door and trying to buy his house because he's got a good lawn, I'm trying to learn from him and trying to figure out how to make my lawn a little bit better until it reaches a point where I'm content and satisfied, and then maybe I can share that with others. I could share my journey with others on how to make my lawn just a little bit better than it is right now. It's filled with weeds. It's tough, but that's a different topic. This is not a weed and feed podcast. But Bloomer Your Planet is about making the most of the opportunity that you have in front of you and tapping into the people around you, understanding that you can learn from anyone if you're willing to actively listen and engage with them, even if it's learning what not to do and how not to carry yourself. You can learn from anyone if you're open and receptive to it.
Wow. What specifically has made you stay on this path of staying at Michigan? You've talked about, understanding that you can learn from anybody, and obviously, it's easiest when you're in person, but you can still spend that time to network and talk with other people and still stay at the same position at Michigan. What do you attribute your ability to stay at Michigan and spend so long there too?
Yeah, you know, I say this quite a bit when I sit in on as part of interviews, whether it's a position on our staff or staff adjacent to us, and I'm part of that committee. When people ask the question after I say I've been here for 13, 14, 15 years, so on, what's kept you at Michigan so long? Like, wow, you've been here a long time. It's the people make the place, right? Again, I'm not going to pretend like I'm that I'm not paid fairly. I'm fortunate to be paid what I'm paid and have the responsibilities and opportunities that I have. But put all of that aside because there's always an opportunity to make more money elsewhere. It's just a nature of athletics and a nature of the real world. The people make the plays, and I feel enriched by the people I'm surrounded with day in and day out, and I truly believe that I enrich their lives as well. And that's not to say that every single moment of every single day is perfect. It's not. It's not rainbows and sunshine and butterfly. But it's wonderful in its imperfections, and it's something that I say readily. And Connor, you and I did not talk about this previously, but I've officiated a few weddings now, and I have one coming up this summer, uh, later on in August. And so that wedding is the wedding of a student athlete alumni that we just built a tremendous relationship, and somebody that I've often said, if we had a team full of this person, we can be really, really successful. Not to say that this person was the best athlete in the world, but her work ethic and her attitude and her approach is what made her successful. And maybe you don't want a team exactly the same type of person, but my job would be really freaking easy if I did have a team full of her because of who she is as a human and what she was willing to do and how she was willing to be able to coach. And so I'm fortunate to be a part of I'll say the most important day of her life, and honored and don't take that lightly. And it's something I look forward to doing and will continue to do for anyone that asks, because it's one of the most humbling and fulfilling tasks that you can do for someone. And so I am I'm excited about that, and that's just a snapshot of why I say that people make the plays. That she contributed something to Michigan and to my life that I can never repay her for. This is my opportunity to offer something to her that will be meaningful for her and her future husband, and I'm going to take it serious because it's a big role, and I can't wait for it. It's going to be an absolute blast.
What was that moment like for you when she asked you to officiate her wedding?
It's emotional, right? It's real. It's exciting. It's a little bit of that butterfly. Oh shoot, what do I do now? Although I've done it before, and I know the process, and it was well in advance. It's not like it was 2 days away, but it's humbling, and it makes you reflect back on the 5 a.m. wake ups for 6 a.m. lift, and the challenging sessions that they go through and their struggles on the field and off the field. And it goes to the frustrations that you have as well with them, or the opportunity, or their struggles or their attitude or approaches, and it makes you remember that championships are great, and I'm fortunate to be part of so many championship teams at Michigan, and I won't ever forget those teams and those seniors that led those teams. but it's more than that, right? I mentioned earlier, it's about making an impact on the lives of others. And so I got into this field because I showed a strong aptitude in the weight room myself. I saw the value on a personal level, and I wanted to be a resource for others and offer something that a service that I thought was missing from a level of expertise in my athletic journey as a D3 student athlete with an institution with limited resources. And so I wanted to do it because I saw the value personally, and I've stayed in it now for well over a decade. I say probably 10, 11, 12 years ago is when I realized that I'm staying in this because I get to impact the lives of others. And that's specifically through their physical development and preparation for sport at the highest level um, on paper. But I believe that I have the ability to connect, relate, inspire, motivate, um, and empowering them to be the best version of themselves and give them the space to do so and let them struggle and let them be real, but give them the space to learn for themselves in a guided fashion. I borrow a phrase from Caroline Mandel, one of our dietitians. She's the director of our performance nutrition department. It's mentored autonomy, and that's that way with our staff members, and it's that way with our student athletes. They deserve mentorship and guidance, but nobody wants to hold their hand. They don't want their hand held. It's not about that. It's teaching and empowering with the intent of them being able to do it for themselves with our guidance, um, and to feel for them and feel with them, but don't feel bad for them. And I won't ever feel bad for anyone because I don't want anyone to feel bad for me. I want them to feel with me and understand and recognize what my emotions are and accept them as they are and offer what they can offer to help turn them around if they need to be turned around, or encourage them to keep those emotions at the level they're at because they're in a really good space. But I don't want ever in my life, I don't want anyone to ever feel bad for me, and I don't want to feel bad for others. I will feel with them, but not bad for them.
And so that mentored autonomy, that's the approach that you take with your athletes.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
I have a student athlete that is an incoming freshman, has gone through the process, and is now on campus training with some modifications for a variety of reasons. Very little training, experience training in the weight room. And one of the first things I said to her is that I don't expect you today, tomorrow, or this week, or the next to be able to function without me, but I want you to work towards being able to operate without me watching you like a hawk. And that's for a few reasons. It's not out of laziness for me. I think self-sufficiency is a tremendous trait to develop. Being able to own your development is something that I can't do for you. I will support you and provide you everything necessary to be successful in the context of strength and conditioning, but you need to want to do it for yourself. I I've said this before, and I don't necessarily use this with student athletes, but it's essentially what I do. I try to lead them to the water and figure out how to make them thirsty. I'm not going to bury their head in the water. I'm not going to force them to drink it. I'm going to lead them to it, and I'm going to teach them how to drink for themselves. And if they struggle with that and they can't do it themselves, I'm going to try to figure out how to make them thirsty so they choose to drink on their own. Because that's how you help build character traits that go beyond the 4 or 5 years or however long you have with them. That's how you get somebody to embrace and reshape potentially their relationships to exercise and wellness and what they might do for the rest of their life beyond just the time that they are competitive athletes in college and beyond if they have the opportunity. So it's this, I think you can accomplish both. Right? You can accomplish both training at a high level to compete for championships, Big Ten and national championships for us in Michigan, while also simultaneously preparing them for life beyond athletics. That's what we do. We're educators. Coaches are educators, and I'm here to educate. And I can educate simultaneously in two different avenues with two different objectives. One being for maximizing performance to compete for championships, and the other for optimizing health and building a strong and positive relationship to exercise and wellness so they can continue on that pathway and be advocates for others, especially if they're in coaching, to live healthy lifestyles themselves.
It's interesting that you bring that point up because it's now something that I've got a GA, and he'll be running women's basketball. And women's basketball is near and dear to my heart this year, right? And so we're going through the recruiting speeches, and my ending of the recruiting speech is always talking about exactly that process, right? Is basketball's going to stop no matter who you are. You could have a professional level, you could have LeBron James like career. It's going to end no matter what. What is your life going to look like after that? And ultimately that's the success marker of the program that I try to run. Is ultimately, can you continue to live on after that? And so, we went through the force plates together. We went through the, VBT, whatever we use. And I kind of gave them notes on what to say and how to operate during that recruiting speech. But then we got to the final piece and I was like, it has to come from you. And if you can't lay out why you want to do this, then maybe strength and conditioning isn't necessarily for you. And so I think at the end of the day, that's what all strength coaches really look for, is exactly like you said, to compete for championships, but there's always something larger. And that's the game of life that's ahead, for everybody.
Sure. Yeah. What you just said, I summarize as it's hard skills and soft skills. The hard skills are VBT, it's force plate, it's GPS systems, it's understanding different periodization strategies and coaching variety of exercises and modifying as needed, whether it's an acute or chronic issue, modifying as needed for individuals or groups, right? All that stuff is a hard skill set. Some of it's taught in the classroom, in a textbook. Some of it's through internships and hands-on practical experience. But ultimately, those are the hard skills that you need to be successful in our field. Nobody's arguing that. And if you argue that, oof. And nobody's arguing the importance of some of the foundational pieces of our profession. What I don't know is focused on enough is the development of soft skills and how important they are in building relationships and building trust and giving you the pathway to allow you to put your hard skill knowledge into use. Right? We don't work with robots, and frankly, if we did, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing because I would hate it. It's not about that. It's not robots. We work with human beings that have real life struggles the same way that you and I do. Sometimes they don't sleep well at night. Sometimes they get in an argument with their significant other. Sometimes they're dealing with a sick parent or sibling. Sometimes they just have a bad day. Sometimes they stub their toe on the bed in the morning before they come into the weight room and they split it open. And guess what? You had heavy triples on the split squat and their toe is bleeding profusely and they can barely put on a shoe. You got to make a change, and you can't just force a square peg in a round hole. I mean, you can, right? You could if you wanted to, but that's not gonna buy you a whole lot of respect. It's not gonna help your credibility with them, and it's not gonna be what sustains long term success. It's literally feeling with them and seeing them and hearing them. I hear you. I've done it. I split my toe before. I've had an ingrown toenail. It hurts like all get out, and it might only hurt for 2 days, but if it hurts on a day that we have split squats and you can't load it, we're going to make an adjustment because I get it. It's excruciating when you pull the sheet over an ingrown toenail. It's unreal, but it's what it is. And so I think when you can teach somebody the importance of soft skills and let them embrace what their strengths are in that space, it gives them a chance to be successful. Not everyone's perfect. There's no soft skill specific development that I would recommend specifically to anyone. That's on each of us as individuals to understand where we're strong and where we're deficient, to address those deficiencies so they're not huge glaring errors, but really strengthen our strengths. And so that's the part that is really challenging, right? Our IQ might be great in hard skills, but the EQ, if the EQ is not up to snuff, doesn't matter how high your IQ is, you're not going to be able to make headway to be able to put it into action. So,
Would you say soft skills is time then?
I think some of it's a little bit inherent, right? Some of it's time and recognition and attitude and approach, right? Humility and willingness to be vulnerable and to understand what you might not recognize about yourself. And those are hard things to hear. I think when you have people around you that can be constructively critical about where you struggle and how to potentially address and improve them, those are the people that are worth surrounding yourself by, because they're saying it not to be mean or rude. They're saying it because they care about you, and they're telling you that this is an area that if you improve, your quality of life as a coach, as a professional, as a human being will likely be better, right? I called the company yesterday about some pest control, and I called them, and I called them a week ago, and I had gotten a different answer a week ago than I did yesterday on the phone, and I was upset. I was really frustrated. But the woman I spoke with yesterday was not the woman I spoke with a week ago, and so I expressed that I am frustrated not at this woman specifically, at the situation, and hearing something different from her that I wish I would have heard a week ago, so that we could have resolved this sooner than the date that they set the appointment for. And I apologize. I said, I'm sorry. I just want to make it very clear that it's not you. It's the situation and scenario, and the different messaging that I'm getting from you than I got from the woman I spoke with a week ago. And I wish that it was different, but I appreciate that you made time for me. Right? That woman didn't need to hear me berating her. I wasn't going to berate her. It's not her fault. She set me up on the track to resolve the issue that we're having. So I appreciate that, but I was frustrated in the moment. So I think it's important to both constructively provide that information to somebody that works in the same role as the other one I spoke with, while also showing thanks and gratitude to the person that actually provided the assistance. She is towards the end of their day. They closed at 6, and it was 5:30 by the time I got off of hold. So she doesn't need it at the end of her day. I told her that it's the end of the day for you. I'm not trying to be that person. Here's where I'm coming from, and I just want to be very clear that it's not you, but I also can't hide the fact that I'm frustrated. She doesn't know me. We'll never interact again unless I call that company and she happens to pick up. But she doesn't deserve to have the end of her day ruined by somebody berating her for something that she had no control over. And so I was intentional about that through my frustration, because she's a human. She is a human, and she deserves that respect. So that was tangential for sure, but
No,
I try to
it's
live that every day.
yeah. How do you balance? Then you spoke about having people who are being honest with you, and then I think about you apply it to an athlete, and I think there's always you do have to have a certain level of honesty. But it was almost I was speaking with another coach about a player the other day, and he was saying, this specific player is he's trying to be too fancy. He does a lot of moves that aren't really within his skill set, and I don't really want to take the wind out of his sails. But how do I have this conversation with him? And that one, it was kind of just blunt honesty. But for you, how do you balance being critical? But I guess critical is not the correct word. How do you balance being constructive with younger athletes who may not necessarily understand that the people who are the most constructive with you are the ones who care the most?
Yeah, yeah. It's hard, right? There's no clear cut answer. I think everyone responds to those type of conversations differently. Um, I say this, unfortunately, a lot of my responses to questions like this end up in the state of it depends, because every situation is unique. I think broadly, I like to ask questions and let them speak, and actively listen to them, and see if they can start to solve it for themselves as they talk.
Mm.
And if they can't quite solve it, but the dots exist to form a picture, my job is to help them connect the dots that exist in the context of that situation and that conversation. I just lead them to the dots they laid out there, and it paints this beautiful picture. They just can't connect it themselves, and so and maybe it is no picture. Maybe it's abstract, and maybe that's who they are. Maybe they just are abstract, right? And there's something to be said about not fitting into a specific mold, and having individuals that are unique and different from each other, and that it's okay that we embrace those different personalities and different viewpoints and perspectives, um, and respect them, and in the hopes that that diversity amongst the group will actually raise the quality of the group from a camaraderie standpoint and ultimately performance standpoint. Um, I wish it was, I don't wish it was more clear cut, because that'd be boring. I don't wish it was more clear. It's challenging, but I think actively listening, offering appropriate responses for whatever the situation is, and then connecting and providing resources where appropriate. This is a good opportunity to talk about the collective unit that we work within in athletics and student athlete health and welfare. if somebody says something that I know is outside of my scope and my wheelhouse, I'm going to listen, and I'm going to actively engage in that conversation. And when the opportunity is right, I'm going to try to refer them to the professional in the area that might be better suited to help them with whatever it is they need help with. Is it athletic counseling in our mental health and performance psych team? Is it athletic training? Is it our athletic trainer, or is it our physical therapist? Is it our dietitian? Is it the coaching staff? Is it somebody else that falls under our umbrella within athletics that I can refer them to and make that connection? Because I'm not the expert in all things. I can't be. Nobody is. And if they tell you the expert in everything, you should turn and run away. But I do have a tremendous amount of respect and deep understanding of the roles of other units within our athletic department and our greater campus community to help build connections and relationships for them that might be fulfilling in the long run. I use a specific example. My wife is our associate director of academic services at Michigan, and we met at Michigan after each of us was here for five years for her and 9 years for me, and whatever it was, 6 years later, we got married, and so she, in addition to her role as our associate director of academic services, she serves as the lead for the student athlete advisory committee. As part of that, she runs a variety of different events, including our student athlete award show, the Mazeys, and some other opportunities, student athlete graduation, and so on. So I know how hard she works as part of SAC. I know how hard the people, especially the executive officers or president, vice president, and so on, within SAC, our student athlete representatives, how hard they work to advocate for the student athlete experience at Michigan, both at Michigan and then in the Big Ten and the national level. I'm aware of that. And so if somebody shows a strong leadership capacity or interest and ability to extend beyond athletics and still balance the demands of their sport and education and everything that goes into the student athlete experience, I'm gonna suggest that they consider participating in SAC if they haven't already, because I know that it could be a pathway for them to hone those leadership skills and to advocate for others and to make an impact on a more global level. And people say it all the time: leave the place better than you found it, leave the jersey better than you found it. What does that mean? It's not just a phrase. It's making contributions that have a lasting impact beyond the time that you spent at that place. And so if somebody shows a strong aptitude in that area, I'm going to encourage them to look into SAC and connect them specifically with Ashley or the past several years. Some of my student athletes in gymnastics and softball served as president and vice president respectively. So I had direct and immediate connection on a regular basis with the president and VP of SAC, and so I might connect that individual directly with one of the two of them, or somebody that I know is heavily involved in SAC. Just as a small example of taking advantage and tapping into the resources that we have just under the Michigan umbrella and in this community, and certainly, pardon me, certainly it applies outside of that for interns and student athletes that show a specific interest in strength and conditioning and human performance. We're going to try and connect them with people on our network so that they can build relationships and gain a deeper understanding themselves. So happy to chat about that, but I'll keep quiet for a second.
No, well, I love that you speak about listening and then making connections based off of what you listen to, because being a podcast host has forced me to listen. Right, I have no
Sure,
choice, and I'm a talker, and I've noticed that I've become better at not just waiting for people to finish talking, right, and I can now actually listen and actively listen, like you mentioned. What is so interesting to me about what you mentioned is, since I've done that, I've connected a lot more people, and I've been able to understand, okay, this person, is potentially, I remember I connected a strength coach, and it's a lot of times it's guests on this podcast. I connected a strength coach with, it was a younger coach who just dealt with a lot of issues that I was like, I've heard this before, and I've seen this exact issue, right? And I
sure,
remember what coach it was, and I connected those two, right? And it's fun. It's almost like you get to be like the matchmaker of strength coaches of sorts. But ultimately, when you talk about what's fulfilling in coaching and making a difference or leaving it better than you found it, is that connection probably never would have happened if I didn't take the time to listen to each of those people and understand this is somebody who could help this person at this time frame, or even just people who I think could be friends. Because I think friends are people who can elevate your quality of life as well. I remember I was speaking with somebody else, and I was like, "Man, you are exactly one of my best friends. Like, I can't even almost I can't tell you guys apart." And so I connected them that day. And I think that part is what's so fun. So that's why I love you talking about the active listening is understanding that you can influence other people's lives by listening and then making those connections.
Sure. Yeah, no question about that. And that's what it's about. I said this earlier and I'll say it again. If you looked at my job description, I'm sure it says something about designing, implementing annual periodized training programs for assigned teams and conducting strength and fitness assessments relative to the demands of the sport and so on and so forth. I get it. We all get it. Job description includes all of that, but it goes beyond that for me, and that's what's kept me in it is the belief that I really do. I get to impact the lives of young people, as student athletes, as interns, as coaches, and ultimately, I also think I have the ability to impact up the chain as well, and impact our administration and help drive change from within. Because the nature of my role, as it stands within our entire athletic department, I'm somewhere in the middle, and it's hard to say if I'm towards the top of the middle or the bottom of the middle, but I'm certainly not at the top, and I'm certainly not at the bottom, and so I get to help impact and drive change from within. And so that's part of my role as well, is figure out how to navigate that and to what resources are available for me to be able to connect with others with the intent of providing better opportunities and better experiences on a holistic level for people beyond just myself.
So an important piece of coaching for you then would be not forgetting you have impact.
Heck yeah. Heck yeah. I do. I get that all the time. And how I carry myself matters. If I say this a lot, I joke more or less about this with our student athletes when they yawn in the weight room. I get it. It's early. Sometimes you're just tired. Maybe it's the afternoon. You're tired. You get that 2:30 feeling, whatever it is. And I just have this meter where I just pick up on people yawning, and they'll catch themselves yawning, and I'll catch them too. And I'll vocalize. I won't yell. I'll raise my voice in their direction so they can hear me. I'll project and say, "Eat it." I just want you to eat your yawn. I want you to recognize that you're just mindlessly yawning and you have no idea what's going on. Get rid of it. Be conscious of it. Accept it. Embrace it. Clench your teeth and eat it. I joke around about it and we have fun with it, but there's a time last year where I caught one of our freshmen during a morning workout and told her to eat it. And then at the end of the workout, we go to break, and we gather up in a circle, and I make eye contact around, and I get to her, and she's in like tears, not tears of she's not sobbing, she's in tears from holding back her yawn. She ate it so hard that I saw tears streaming down her face, and I'm like, I love that you listened to what I had to say. If you need to let it out, let it out. Right? I'm partly joking, partly serious, but I love that you took that to heart. Right? And it's pick your head up. I mean, people talk about the recovery position, which science maybe indicates that hands on your knees is beneficial for recovery. I certainly don't disagree with science, but there's something to be said about standing up and putting your hands on your hips and diaphragmatically breathing that way versus with your hands on your knees. And if your hands are going to be on your knees, at least lock in a really strong and solid position versus just slouching over with your hands on your knees. Your body language, your attitude, all of that matters. We're on a podcast today, and if you're watching this video, you see me in a full button-down shirt. I do have a block M on it, but I'm in a full button-down shirt, and I've got dress slacks on, and I have dress shoes on. I'm happy to show you if you care to see it. But I think there's something about how you carry yourself day in and day out, and the message that you deliver to other people and how you present yourself matters. And it's first impression, right? If somebody's listening or watching this for the first time, they've never met me, I want them to understand that I take my job seriously, not just as a performance professional in strength and conditioning, but as a human and as a athletics professional and somebody that aspires um, for higher roles to leave a greater, more holistic impact on those around them. And so some of the best advice I've ever gotten is to act as if. Carry yourself in a manner that aligns with the position you're working towards versus the position you're in. Act as if you're in that chair as much as you can, realizing that you can't ever quite put yourself through the things that person in the chair above you is going through, but you can work through as much as you can so that when time comes, it's not just, holy smokes, I don't know where to start. You've at least given it some really heavy thought, and kind of lived it as much as you can, and act as if you're in that role until you're actually there, without disregarding being excellent in the role you're in, because otherwise, how do you get to the next level? But it's a different topic.
Well, I'm going to ask you another "it depends" question, right? Your answer will probably it depends, but you talk about leading by example, but then also being able to be lighthearted and kind of joke about things like eating the yawn. How do you balance those things? Because it's hard, in my opinion, to do that. It's a soft skill. How do you approach that balance of being in between presenting yourself appropriately at all times and then also understanding that there's a lighter side of life?
Sure. Yeah. You talked about this a little bit earlier with your current GA and the recruiting, the conversation around recruiting, and the recruiting pitch for prospective student athletes. And I think about what that's like for me. Uh, I enjoy it. I enjoy those conversations because I it gives them a snapshot of who I am and how I function. I am dead serious and matter of fact when I say my objective is to help you compete for championships at the highest level and leave here with rings on your finger. Our objective is a national championship. That's our objective. That's our expectation. That's what we're going to work towards. And I love that. And I love that challenge. And if that's not what you're about, then that's okay. But if that's not what you're about, this might not be the place for you. In that process, I want to enjoy it. Right? People talk about the process. The process is what you do day in and day out to get to the end result of whatever the end result is that given season and over the course of someone's career. So the process is what you do on a daily basis that set you up for the level of success that you're going to attain. And so that process, there should be some fun. There should be some enjoyment. There's going to be plenty of hard times and challenging times, times where we demand a lot out of you. I personally demand a lot out of you. Your coaches do, your academic counselors do, your loved ones do, your support system do. And there's times where we want to be able to laugh at ourselves, laugh at each other, laugh at things that are just funny. Um, and there's times where you just need to be real. You just need to be real all the time. And I'm not going to sugarcoat who I am. I make it clear as day to them that if they expect me to be some sort of militant authoritarian figure, and to have a blowhorn and a whistle and a voice that sounds like I might gargle with bleach, I'm not the guy. And you're not going to get that experience out of me. You're going to get somebody that cares and somebody that listens and somebody that wants to know where you are physically and mentally and emotionally, where you are, so that I can offer the best service to you. Somebody that's going to communicate on a high level, that's going to push you, but not to a point where you despise or resent the services I provide. And I want you to have a really strong relationship and dynamic with this space. I want to be a positive impact, and I'm going to do everything I can to do that for you. And I want you to be the same for me. I find fulfillment in my role, and I'm going to learn from you as much as you're going to learn from me if you allow me to. Because I am a human just like you, just like our coaches. They're going to learn the same, and we're going to compete at the highest level with the intent of winning championships and having some fun along the way. And when we do have some struggles, reflecting back on them as we celebrate a championship, and making that part of who we are, so that in 10 years you come back and you'll find me in the same spot, doing the same thing I'm doing, kicking butt and taking names, and we can embrace and share those memories together, because that's what life is about. So for me, it's that, right? That's what it is. It's living that recruiting pitch day in and day out. And if it's a grad transfer or an upperclassman, maybe the recruiting pitch is different, but it's still the same idea. It's still I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to hear you. And if they're a fourth year, fifth year transfer, grad transfer, the conversation is you're grown up. You're an adult. You've been through it. You know what's worked for you, what hasn't. And so the conversation, if you choose to come here, the conversation that you and I have is going to be different than a freshman would have, because you've earned that based on the experiences you've had. And I know that deep down you have a deep understanding of yourself, deeper than I could ever pretend to know. And I don't want to waste any time treating you as if you've never been in a weight room. You're coming from fill in the blank institution. There's a chance I know your strength coach and I respect them. But I need to know what works for you, what hasn't, and you need to put some trust and faith in me. We need to move in the same direction together as quickly and efficiently and safely as possible. So all of that is kind of what what drives me every day. It's why I keep showing up. It's what makes me who I am, and it's being authentic to myself, so that people get the real me. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Somebody asks me how my day is and it's going great, I'm going to say it's great. Somebody asks me how my day is going and it's not going great, I'm going to say, you know what? My day was okay. It's been fine. But I'm excited you're here and we're going to get after it. Because it's okay to be real. And it's not me being a downer. I'm not going to be an Eeyore. Oh, my day is so sad. I live a pretty darn good life. I got a pretty good life. I've got bad days. If I have a bad day, it's all right. Just because I have a bad day doesn't mean that they're going to have a bad day. But I'm not going to sugarcoat it and pretend like everything's fine when maybe it's not. Because they'll see through it and they'll wonder themselves, because we build that dynamic between us.
Do you think being real is the missing link for a lot of coaches? I look at your experience. I look at not only 15 years at Michigan, but then to be in the field for longer than, I mean, a ton of coaches within the field. And then I look at somebody who's my age, right? I watch friends leave almost monthly, it feels like. Do you feel like being real is one of those missing links?
Yeah, I think being real, I associate that with authenticity. And I think if you're authentic with the people that you interact with on a regular basis, you lay the groundwork for success. I think inauthenticity and being ingenuine is palpable. And I think it prohibits you from building the relationships that are necessary to be successful in what we do, and building the trust that's necessary to do what we do. And so it's this balancing act of making sure that you keep it professional, right? That's tricky, because especially as a young professional that's so close to the age of the student athletes, there needs to be a clear distinction. But I have no issue sharing that, and being real with them, understanding that there's some things that if a boundary needs to be set and there's a lack of clarity on the boundary, I'll make that clear as day. If they say something a certain way, or if they ask a certain question that just isn't appropriate, and thankfully I don't have many of those moments, but I think they also respect and understand the dynamic, between myself and them, and so that authenticity, it's led me to being invited to officiate weddings. It's led me to being invited to go to weddings. It's led me to uh, random text messages and Instagram messages from student athlete alums that they see something on Instagram or social media that reminds them of their experience as a student athlete with me, and they send it my way, and two or three of them within a minute of each other send it to me, and I get a good chuckle out of it, because they saw something and reminded me of our connection over the course of their careers. I don't think I could be successful if I wasn't real with the people that make up my day to day life. And that's student athletes, it's coaches, it's just our support staff and my coworkers. Um, our wedding was last summer in August of 23. was had a heavy Michigan contingent, because those are people that we spend a lot of time with and that we enjoy their presence. And it isn't perfect, and that's okay. So I think if you can start with being authentic and real, especially if you can manage the fine line potentially of professionalism that exists, and being overly bordering on fraternizing, if you will, um, it creates a really, really strong pathway for success. I like it. I like when somebody asks me how my weekend is, or when a student athlete that I've worked really closely with one on one because of an injury, what have you, ask me how the patio is that we just had put in a couple months ago. And I like talking about the fact that we got an uni pizza oven for the wedding. We just broke it out, and I made a bunch of pizzas for some friends this weekend because it was cool. It was a cool weekend. It's cool that they're going to see Luke Combs or one of the country music stars that's playing in Ford Field this weekend. Can't recall who. And like that point to that point, especially in the summertime when things are voluntary. If we typically lift Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and that concert's a Thursday night in the middle of June, and they're not going to get home until whatever time you get home from a country music concert, and they would typically lift at 7 a.m. on Friday. Guess what? If they communicate that, I'm going to say, why don't we move the lift to Thursday? I'd rather you lift Wednesday and Thursday back to back than Wednesday and Friday on 5 hours or 4 hours or 3 hours of sleep, or just skip it entirely. And so that creates a real conversation, especially when it's voluntary, right? It's required. Is that really the decision you want to make? There's not a whole lot of flexibility, but there's so much time that we spend outside of in Olympic sports in a voluntary capacity. Really, for a lot of our sports, from the time classes end in May until we start classes again just before Labor Day, it's largely voluntary, and so you're essentially empowering them to actively make the conscious decision to show up and to put time in, whether it's show up with us day in, day out because they're local and in town, or they're doing it on their own. You're empowering and inspiring them to make the decision that's best for them and their teammates, and giving them the pathways to also live a life as a 21-year-old and enjoy going to a country music concert because it's freaking cool. Um, and so it's this happy medium, that and this balancing act that we all need to we need to live. Right? I'm going to take vacation, and my coworkers are going to cover for me, and I'm going to try to turn my mind off from work as much as I can when I'm sitting on the beach in Hawaii for my honeymoon / 1 year anniversary in 6 or 7 weeks. And not because I don't care, but because they need the best version of me when I return. And the way for me to do so is to disconnect and recharge and lock in for a long school year where we're going to compete for championships.
I think that took me a long time to figure that lesson out, right? Was to understand that being a good coach doesn't mean that when I'm on vacation, I'm texting the person who covered for me every day asking how the lift was, right? It
Sure.
was more
Yeah.
about spending time with my fiance and disconnecting and then coming back. And I recently went to Ireland. It was a fantastic trip, and it was really cool to tell our athletes about the experience. And like you said, when they ask about how was the patio, everybody asked how Ireland was, and it was great to tell them that I am somebody outside of strength coach Connor. I do have a life, and I've got a dad who I went on a great trip with, and it was a once in a lifetime experience. So I think those things are ultimately what, when I reflect on the fun part of strength and conditioning, that's what pops into my head.
Sure. Heck yeah. It makes you human. It makes you relatable. It shows some vulnerability that you're willing to share a really important moment in your life. The same way that if something negative happens in your life, you'll likely share it, not because you want pity or for somebody to feel sorry for you, but because they deserve to know why you're not at your best, or why you're not there if you have that dynamic. I think the people that struggle with that struggle in this space in athletics. Athletics is a business. College athletics is has been for a long time and will continue to be business driven, probably more so now than ever. But it's been that case for a long time. And so nobody is, uh, hopefully, nobody's blind to that fact, and thinks anything else or otherwise. With that said, it is a unique business, in my opinion. It's not a clear cut Fortune 500 enterprise where it's purely bottom line driven. If that was the case, there'd be 2 or 3 sports that exist in the NCAA that can self-support at a majority of institutions, and a vast majority of other sports would cease to exist. And that's hard for me to say, but it's also a reality in that a large number of sports at a large number of institutions end up losing money and being in the red, and are supported by a variety of different support lines, whether it's football generating revenue for everyone else, or men's basketball, or hockey, or some other combination of sports, or student fees, or philanthropic efforts from alumni and donors, whatever it may be. There's only a handful of sports across the country that can sustain themselves based on the revenue they generate and what they put out from an expense standpoint. And so it's more than just a business, because if it was just purely business, there would be no Olympic sports. There would not be 31 teams at Michigan, or 36 at Ohio State, or 40 something at Harvard, or wherever the case is, because they don't generate revenue. All they do is end up in the red from an expense and revenue standpoint. It's not just about that, and it can't ever be, in my opinion. It's about the experience as a student athlete. It's about what you learn from athletics and the life skills you develop, and how they carry over into the real world and your chosen career path, be it medicine, be it law, be it education or business, or whatever pathway you choose. The skills that you learn being part of a competitive athletic team and program go a long way in long-term success in life.
And if you provide that experience, then you are lucky enough to be able to officiate weddings.
Heck yeah, let's go. Let's rock and roll. If you guys are looking for someone, I'm not sure what your date is, but we'll see if I can make myself available.
You actually, after this conversation, you really would be a top choice. I did pick my mom, actually.
Yeah,
So,
it's awesome.
yeah,
Very
yeah.
cool.
I've
Very
got my
cool.
dad as my
Excellent.
best man, and my mom as the officiant.
Man, let's go. Let's rock and roll. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
Heck
I'm very
yeah.
excited for that.
Yeah, heck yeah.
Well, Lou, thank you for coming on, man. I could go for hours. I really could, actually. It's been really, really fun to hear your perspective and get to know you more, and I'm sure our listeners feel the same. If somebody wanted to follow you on social media, or keep up with your journey, what would be a good way to do that?
Yeah, I'm not as prevalent on social media as I maybe could or should be. Could be, not should be. Lew Porch, Lew Porch, like front or back porch, would be my X, formerly Twitter, and also Instagram. Good luck on Instagram. I think I have 2 or 3 posts all tied to my engagement and wedding, and my niece. Otherwise, my email address is the same, lewporch@umich.edu. Check out mgoblue.com. You'll find my bio, and it should have my email link in there. I'll preface that with saying that I'm slow to respond at times, but I pride myself on the phrase "better late than never." And so, if you do reach out, and I do take some time, I apologize in advance, but it's not uncommon for me to say that after a week, 2 weeks, 2 months. Use the phrase "sorry for my delay, but wanted to get back to you now." So, happy to have conversations, and whatever I can do to help somebody in their career path and their journey to finding success in this field and in life beyond it. I'm happy to be a resource.
That's amazing. Well, thank you for just being a resource just for this past hour. It's greatly appreciated.
Yeah, no question. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for spending some time and staying engaged, and I enjoy the conversation as well.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Tom.